Hey there, everyone. My name's Tim Gillespie. I'm the lead pastor here at Crosswalk Church in Redlands, California, right next to you guys. And this is my daughter, Hannah Gillespie. She's a first-year OT student right there at Loma Linda. Hannah, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. I'm excited to get to talk to you guys today about my kind of journey with dyslexia and what that's looked like throughout my life. So I hope that you're excited to stick along with me today.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a good start. We're kind of set up here in my office, kind of a little podcast setup. So bear with us. We'll do cuts and that sort of thing. But Hannah, they're talking about in their class. They're talking about invisible disabilities, and so you've had quite a journey with dyslexia. So maybe you can tell us about that, and I'll maybe chime in a little bit here and there.
Yeah, sounds good. And you're welcome to chime in. So you are my dad. You got to see it from kind of that third person perspective. Um, so, kind of the first thing I remember feeling different was at school. I just remember I loved being at school because it was with a bunch of friends, but I really felt apprehensive in the classroom. And it just kind of felt like something wasn't clicking. And you're like, okay, you're in first grade. How can you even like feel that about a classroom environment? But I was really struggling with reading. By the time I got to about second grade, I wasn't even close to the reading level, um, or kind of deciphering the spelling words and um, at the level that I needed to be. And I think that's when you guys first reached out for testing.
Yeah, that's what I think it was second grade. Your second grade teacher came and said you weren't being able to get those 50 sight words. You were struggling with that. And a real quick parentheses here: as a parent who hasn't necessarily dealt with dyslexia before, I would find myself getting angry that you weren't trying harder, which is bad. It's bad parenting. I'll just admit that now. But we thought, hey, why isn't she doing it? We've since learned Hannah has one of the most incredible work ethics of anyone we know, but it was difficult for us because we didn't really know what was going on as well, and we know it was hard for you. So we didn't get a diagnosis right at the beginning, and in fact, we took you out of school for third grade and homeschooled you for a year to see if we could catch you up.
Yeah, so you made me the weird homeschool kid, so thank you for that. Um, yeah, it was hard to explain, I think, at that point, what I was struggling with. I think now I can describe it pretty well. When I think about word placement and reading a word, I don't think of the letters, and the perception feels different. Like, I know some people will tell me they will read a word and read every letter of the word and make the sounds go together. But I really struggled with that concept. And when I would look at groups of letters, I couldn't place them together. So, kind of the substitutive device I would use is I would look for spacing. So, I've more memorized letters, and I read words as a whole. So I had a lot of trouble recognizing spelling, and I struggle with a lot of concrete details and kind of the mechanical parts of reading and learning. Um, yeah, this is really hard.
No, it is hard, but it's your story, which I think is important. What we learned pretty early on is that you would guess at words,
Mm-hmm.
kind of based on their shape. And I remember one thing that we did. They have that, and I think you can still find it on the internet. That paragraph, that's like a dyslexia paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all it's a paragraph that you can read, but the letters are kind of shimmering and twisting and moving back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember showing that to you. You were probably in fourth or fifth grade at this point. So just real quick, we kept Hannah out for a year, and then we put her back into third grade. So you actually lost a grade,
Mm-hmm.
which had to be hard just socially.
It was very challenging. Um, I grew up with those kids. I started kindergarten with them, and when you go to a small Adventist school or any school really, kids will notice and point out like, oh, she's the special ed kid, or oh, that's the weird cat girl. And I tended to have sort of these like fixations. So I really liked animals, and that was something that I was just deeply passionate in. And sometimes I felt like the focus that I would have was more attentive on one subject than some of my peers, and so I kind of struggled with that socially. And it was a little embarrassing to have to come back to a school. Oh, you've been gone for a year. Where are you? And then I go back and I'm in a grade below a lot of my peers. So that was definitely very challenging.
And then, like I said, I showed you that paragraph, and you just looked at it and said, "What's wrong with it?"
Mm-hmm.
Because you couldn't tell the difference. And through this time, we had teachers saying, "Oh, just do left and right. Do your B's and your D's like this. Not helpful." And in fact, the longer we lived with this, the more we learned like left and right was just kind of a thing.
Yeah. I try to explain it to people like you put on a shoe. So you put on your shoe and you feel that it's wrong, but I don't have any concept of which foot it should fit on. I don't know how it should feel. So when I go to look at my L and L, this looks just as much as an L to me. I have no concrete weight to those letters. And so an adaptive tool that I've used in the past is a dyslexia font. And so the letters are weighted at different points so that they're less transposable. But because it's a processing disorder, so people ask me if I see things like they're moving around or floating on a page. I'm like, it's not Harry Potter. I'm not like reading this moving book, but it doesn't have the concreteness, and it's really hard to explain that because I will just miss things. They just disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating, especially for those of us who aren't dealing with those kinds of processing particular issues. And so, 5th grade, 6th grade, you're keeping up. You're doing well. You're doing kind of average, grade-wise, but you're really smart. We always knew that. We always thought you were really smart, and we're frustrated. We were frustrated certainly by the fact that kind of a traditional learning environment wasn't allowing you to thrive. And so your cousin, I guess they were your cousin, went to a Montessori school, and we began to see maybe that would be a solution or a help. So in 5th grade, we actually had you jump a grade. You caught back up essentially. Missed your 6th grade year, but moved into a Montessori environment in 7th grade. Tell us a little bit about kind of the Montessori environment and the differences that may be.
Well, I could talk to you about my Montessori education all day because it's the biggest change of my life. I remember leaving this private education, which is a great education. I worked there. I love that school. But I remember leaving and telling my peers, I get to go to the school with the farm. I get to go to the school where I get to choose what to learn. And something that was amazing going into that environment, I remember I had to reassess for dyslexia because I had never been formally diagnosed because of the discrepancy between my grades or discrepancy between some of my testing. I wasn't I wasn't a perfect cast type for like, oh, that ADHD kid, oh, that dyslexia kid. And that tends to be the case with a lot of younger girls who have these kind of learning disabilities. But when I got reassessed, it came up kind of negative again because they're like, oh, you're working really hard, you're getting this done. But this is the first time I had an interaction with a group of teachers who were all agreed, well, we're going to help you no matter what. Okay, so you didn't test, but we see you're struggling. We see that these marks have been made by your other teachers in the past. Like, we have to honor your learning experience no matter who you are or what the state says you need. And I also had really good peers in the sense of my best friends listened to me and understood me. And I even had a friend who, even all the way into our senior year, we would sit out of class and she would read the articles with me. And the environment outside of just reading was an environment where students got to have a lot of leadership skills. So when we wanted to do something, we would do it. Whether that was building a new goat pen or chicken coop or creating a week-long educational experience about local art, we got to be in that environment and we got to make our meals happen from planting the food to serving it in the kitchen. And there was just a dedication and a togetherness, which sounds silly when talking about middle schoolers and high schoolers, but we were all in it to participate in our education, and I just ate it up.
So that alternate environment really made a difference in your education because you weren't just kind of on the conveyor belt of traditional education. And I remember that, but it wasn't all easy. I mean, we remember, my mother and I remember, basically you being assessed at the school and them saying, well, she's not doing bad enough to be dyslexic, which was not helpful. And they literally said, well, maybe she's just an average kid. And I know we're like every other parent, well, she's not average. But we really struggled with that. So we actually continued to do testing outside. We went to the BHI here at Loma Linda. Unfortunately, that wasn't a great experience.
I remember them saying, everybody has strengths and weaknesses.
And so that was a difficult one for us. Finally, and I don't remember what year it was. Was it like your junior year?
It was my junior year.
Finally, we went and got you tested out in LA with a specialist, and he read the test results and was like, she's clearly dyslexic, and that was a relief for us. How did you feel about that when you finally got the diagnosis?
Well, it was probably the most validating experience of my life, because this whole time I was just, well, what if I'm stupid? What if it is really me? What if my parents are just advocating for me because they like me? What if my teachers are just being kind because? But then it didn't make sense because I was working so hard, and I have this sense of self and sense of sort of righteousness because I felt like I had to work so hard and earn everything. And so it didn't make sense. And then in some respects, it didn't make sense to come out of these testing and be like, well, it's incongruent, because I'm like, I talk to my peers and they don't experience school the way I do. They don't need what I need. They don't need help. They don't need this extra stuff. And I just, sometimes when I was receiving services before I had my diagnosis, I felt like I was cheating, or I would be apprehensive to use them. And I've even had teachers be they would interact with me in a way that was very conflicting. Right. They would come at me with a lot of aggression. So I came to one teacher in middle school. This was before my diagnosis. And I said, hi, I'm Hannah. I have this little spiel every time I met a new teacher. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a student with a learning disability. I'm a student with dyslexia. These are the kind of things that would help me. And I had one teacher say, well, what do you have? Dyslexia or a learning disability? And I was in 7th grade, so I was just like, I went to the bathroom and cried. And then again in high school, I had kind of this salty dog chemistry teacher who I ended up loving eventually. But I came up to her after class, after everyone had left. And again, I was like, hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a student with a learning disability. I have dyslexia. And she was like, you have a learning disability? And I was like, yes. And she's like, okay, prove it. And I was like, oh. And one of the things I had asked for is, like, I may need to take notes online because I can't read back my notes because they're unintelligible and the spelling's wrong. It's just overall not helpful. And so she asked me to prove it by writing my name on the board to prove that I needed accommodations.
Yeah, that's A, not okay, and B, your name is a palindrome.
Yeah.
Spelled correctly backwards and
I know. I mean, that's the first thing they teach you in school. So I feel like I had that one down, but I almost wanted to just scribble it just to get back at her. And we had a very tense relationship because now everything that she taught me or wanted to teach me, it was a lot harder for me to just emotionally let that go to learn. And it was also a difficult subject. And I eventually made her cry from how many times I came to her asking for questions. The reason she cried is she said, I just don't know how to help you, which is interesting because I think I told her, right. But it's okay.
And through this all, I want to hit on a couple different subjects and then we'll wrap this up. We don't want to go too long. But you've become an incredible self-advocate because you kind of had to, right? Maybe talk about that just a little bit as that has happened through high school, college now, and then now into graduate school.
Yeah. Self-advocacy is challenging. It's really hard to balance when to be firm and when to be gentle. And I think that really comes down to some of these interpersonal relationships we have with our professors. Because I had the resource teacher at my college was very sweet and another kind of salty dog character. She'd been there for a while, and she had her way of doing it. And I said, these are my accommodations. These are what I need. This is what I need help for. And she said, okay, but you have to come to me. But then I'd come to her, and her process wasn't clear, and she was using technology that I know we had very much surpassed in the world of specialized education. And I would challenge her on that and say, like, please, can we find an easier way to share this information? And she would get really frustrated with me. And then because of some of her mistakes she made, because she wasn't as capable with the technology, I had been accused of cheating in class because of some of the misinformation, just poorly handled systems. I've had some teachers who are great, no questions asked, absolutely anything you need. And then I've had teachers who just shut me down and kind of like, okay, whatever. And I've had teachers who said they didn't even know what dyslexia was in collegiate settings. And so I think as I go to grad school, I'm having to figure out where those accommodations line up with the professional setting. And it's a little challenging because I know I have the state board test that I have to do, and I can get accommodations for that. But when I go out to my clinical placements, I've even talked with Chuck Dart at our School of Allied Health Professions, and he says, you need to see what you need and decide that so we can communicate with your clinical placements. And I'm like, I don't know. This is the first time I think I don't know.
And you have something called a 504.
Yes.
Which is part of the Federal Disabilities Act.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to follow you, not in a bad way, that's going to be a companion for you to talk about accommodations, not just through school, but actually into your professional setting, correct?
Yes, I do need to get documentation updated because it's been 7 years since I've been diagnosed, so it's been a while. But it should follow me through because it's part of the Americans with Disabilities, ADA. So that should follow me up and is a legal documentation and paperwork. And I think that is so important because before I was a IEP plan, and that only is in the school and can be assessed within a school and doesn't follow you forward. So it was crucial. That's what my Montessori teachers said. It's crucial for me to get that paperwork to move on.
Okay, two things. You've actually made accommodation for left and right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do little TikTok things. Why don't you show us that? And then I'm going to ask a question about what you want physicians to know as these students become physicians. What do you want them to know about someone with dyslexia or somebody with maybe kind of an invisible disability?
Okay, so let me show you my tattoos. It's going to be a little awkward because they're on the inside of my arms. So I have right, and I have left. And these are super helpful for me. They're in the exact position where I can read them when I'm driving, which was super helpful because I failed my driver's test twice because I may have turned the wrong direction. Or got a little close to the bike lane, a little bit of both. But so those have been super helpful. In my anatomy class, I had to ask my professors, I was like, is this cheating if I can see my tattoos during the test? Do I need to cover this up? And they were like, I've never come across this issue before, and no. So that's super helpful. And then what do I want to tell physicians? Just be mindful what you say. I think it's okay to make mistakes and ask for clarification. If you don't understand something or you see something on someone's chart, be open to asking them about it because your perceived conceptions may not be exactly what you think. So what you think an experience with dyslexia might be, it might be more. And then be mindful of comorbidities that follow these things. So people with ADHD and dyslexia tend to be closely linked with anxiety disorders and depression because of some of the societal things that they grow up with or just because of the brain chemistry. There's a lot of new research coming out about neurodivergent brains, and what their experience is like, and you just need to understand that it's a spectrum. And just because you see someone has, dyslexia, autism, it doesn't mean they're high functioning or low functioning. It doesn't mean anything about the person. The way they exhibit things and live life and who they are not able to even be defined in these one word DSM-5 things. And people are cool, so get to know them, because we've got some funny stories. Like when I went to the nurse and I wanted to get my Hep B, but I accidentally said HPV. And then I had her sign it off, and she's like, I did not give you the wrong shot. So also maybe double check what you do.
All right. Well, Hannah, thank you for being with us today. Thank you guys for listening. We hope it's been beneficial. And you're around campus, right? So if you see Hannah, say hello. And I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you about it. And Hannah, I just want to say, as your dad, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.